What we're going to be looking at this week isn't strictly speaking a .NET 8 feature. It's been around a little bit longer than that. And in fact, it's based on a plugin that there is in VS Code. But it's come into .NET 8 because the template for a web application now includes this HTTP file, which we're going to be talking about. So let's take a look at that straight away. And so let's just go into Visual Studio and create a new project and just go for the Web API template. Click on Next. Just leave everything as the default. And that will generate the standard application, and if we run it up, we'll see we left Swagger enabled. So we should be seeing the basic Swagger interface, and we can get one of these random weather forecasts that you're very familiar with. But what's new is that it's given us this HTTP file. So it's just named it after the application. So we've got web application 7.http, and if we take a look in there, we can see what we've got. We've got a specification of a GET request for a weather forecast. So what we can see in these files is an alternative to Swagger or to Postman or whatever you are using for testing on your RESTful API. And so we can see it's just got the one endpoint. If we click debug on that, then it starts up the application, but we're not really interested in that. What we want to see though is here we've got the result. So there we can see our weather forecasts coming through. We can also look at the raw response without any formatting. We can look at the headers of the response. And indeed, we can look at the actual request that was sent off. So all of that we've got there. You'll notice we've got a couple of options there. We've got the send request and the debug. If you do the send request, then it's assuming that the server is already running and we just get the fact we couldn't make a connection. So if you're going to do that, you need to run it up first, and then you can do the send request, and that all looks fine. So either way to do that, the debug of the send request, that works okay. But let's not stick with this out-of-the-box application. Let's actually go to something that's a bit more advanced. So if we just go back, we've got this library project, which has a control in this case. So this HTTP file works both for minimal APIs, which is what we're seeing in that last example, but also when you've got a controller. And so we've got a controller there with a number of endpoints. And once again, if we run this up, then you can see we're getting the Swagger to look at all of those. But this one, because I created this a while ago, doesn't have that HTTP file. Various ways we could add it. We could just add a file of that type and start putting everything in by hand. But actually, it's quite a nice tool to help us with that. If we go to the View menu and go to Other Windows, then you can see on here, amongst the dozens of windows, we've got this thing called the Endpoints Explorer. And if we click on that, that will bring that up, and we can drill down. And you can see that it's automatically detected for us all of those endpoints that we had on the controller. And as I say, that would also work for a minimal API as well. And so we've got the three gets, we've got the post, the put, and the delete. We can get information about those, and so nothing particularly new there. But we can also right-click on that and do a generate request. And given that was the first one, that will just generate the HTTP file for us. So you can see that we now have our controller API.http that we can start making use of. So let's put in all of those. So let's do the three gets first, just to have them in a more useful order. And then we'll do the post, and then the put, and then the delete. And each one of those just fills out the file. So now you can see we've got all of those in there. And once again, if I did say a debug just on that get, which is the get for all of them, it runs up the application, and then over there we can see the results where we're getting all those books coming through and the other information as well. And so it's quite a handy way that we can just have these predefined requests for whatever we want. It's just generated the basic ones there, but we could then add more for ourselves if that's what we wanted to do. There's quite a few other nice features in there as well though. Notice, for example, we've got this @controller API host address. And that @ is a way that we can specify variables that we can then use elsewhere in the file. So you can see each one of those gets is using HTTPS localhost 7061, and by putting it in double curly braces, that will put the value of that variable in at that point. So that just means if we want to change the port number or anything like that, we only have to do it in one place, and it all will work straight off that. And that can be useful for other things as well. If we look at our second get, we can see in this case, it's showing us the format that can go in, that it takes an ID, either in the query string or in the root. And so if I were to actually hard code something in there, put a 2 in there, and then do the send request on that one, you see we just get back book number 2. But that is also the sort of thing that we might want to turn into a variable. So I can just say at book ID equals, and let's put 3 in there. And then in here, I could now do double curlies, and in those put book ID. And now when I run that request, it will give me back book number 3. And again, we can see in the request what was going out there. There was the 3 that we had in that, along with the other information. But suppose we wanted also to test in there for having an invalid ID. Well, that's one of the really nice things about this, because if I just take that and then paste it in again, and then I'm going to put a comment in here, which we can just do with a hash, and we're going to say get should return 404. And so what I'm then going to do is on this one, I'm going to say at invalid book ID equals, and let's go for a value we don't have in there and change that to invalid. And so now we've got 2 gets, and rather than having to change the value, we can just send that one and we get back the 404 not found, and so we can see what's happened there. Let's look at some of the others. Probably the one that's most interesting to look at is something that has a body, so either the post or the put. So if we look at the post, we can see it's just given us curly braces, and then it's got this comment for a book review. And I have to say that's one of the drawbacks that we have compared with something like Swagger. If I just bring up the Swagger and go to the post on that, you can see that it gives us the format. If we do a try it out there, it gives us something that we can put in. And so actually it's quite easy to copy that, and then we could use that in the example we've got here. So we could put that book review in there, maybe change some of the values. So just call that new title, give it a rating of, let's say 4. And then if we do the send on that, then it sends us back the created objects that's created at ID 15, and that's all worked fine. And if we then maybe on here change that one to 15 and send that request off, then we can see that's what we're getting back. So putting in a payload, putting in the body, you can do that. You can also see you can put in various different headers, whatever it may be that you want. We saw on the request there that we've got the application/JSON, so that's the content type we've put in there, but we can put other ones in as well. Once again though, it would be nice if we could maybe put that into a parameter, and so that's what we'll do. So let's copy that, and then up here we're going to say at new book equals, and then just paste in that bit of JSON. And then in here we might want to just do the double curlies, and then in there we can just put in new book, and let's send that one. And unfortunately we're getting an error, and that's what we're getting back. And if we go over to the request, this is one of the nice things here, we can see the request it's actually sending, and you can see it's hit a problem. It's only sending the opening curly brace, the rest of that hasn't worked. And the reason it hasn't worked is when you're declaring these variables, you've got to declare them on a single line. So we'd have to tidy this up a bit and just put everything there in the one line. Now, you might think there should be some kind of continuation marker that allows us to go over the end of the line. I've looked around, I cannot find a way to do that with a backslash is what you'd expect in many languages, but it doesn't seem to be working. If anyone knows how you can put a continuation in there, that'd be great. But if we now do that and we send off the request, this time you can see it's worked fine. And if we look at the request, then it's correctly sending the JSON. So you've got that slight limitation, which I could well imagine getting quite messy if your objects were bigger than just having those 3 properties we've got there. But that's how you can do it, or you can just, as we saw originally, have it hard-coded in there. The put works very much the same. The delete, pretty much the same. Let's just use that. So let's go to the get and just do the get all again. And if we scroll down, we'll see that we've messed up the database with a couple of new titles, 15 and 16. So let's go in there and just on the delete, we'll do a delete of 15 and we'll send that. And the response is simply 200 OK. There's nothing other than that. Get rid of 16 as well, delete that, and then go back to the get all. And we can see that we've tidied up the database and those have disappeared. So that's all I really want to say about that. There's a number of other features that we can put in this HTTP file, but I didn't want to go into too much detail. It's not quite as many features as we had in the original VS Code plugin that this was based on, so it may be that over time we will get some more features in there, but it's working in a pretty basic way. To be honest, as far as I can see now, I think I'd rather stick with Swagger. Swagger seems to me an easier way to do this sort of thing. But the thing about Swagger is you've just got the one way of doing each thing for each of your endpoints. Whereas here, we can have multiple ways of using different endpoints. So for example, we saw that with the get, we could have the get with a valid book ID, we could have the get with an invalid book ID, have those as two separate predefined requests, and then in order to use them, you've just got to hit the send request button. Whereas with Swagger, you'd have to fill in the parameter each time to do it in a different way. So it does have advantages. Compared with Postman, well, Postman, you can predefine queries like that, but it's probably a bit more complicated. So there's pros and cons to each of them. I'm sure as time goes by, when people get a feel for this, when I get a feel for this, we may start finding it's more and more useful. But it's certainly a feature that we can make quite a lot of use of. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, do click like, do subscribe, and I'll see you next time.